Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the program Islam Explained Theology Series. Today we'll be talking about a very controversial topic, and that is the Darwinian theory. Is it compatible with Islam? We have here again our theologian, Omar Argi. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Raisel. Thank you for inviting me back on
It's
this.
a pleasure to have you.
Yeah.
Omar, you have also a science background.
Yes, actually I do have a science background.
So you'll help us explain about this very complex issue that we have. So can we begin with the theory, is evolution compatible to Islam or not? Could you explain, enlighten us?
Yes, I'll try my best, Raisel.
Thank you.
Well, I would say first, if it is science, it is compatible to Islam. Because Islam does not contradict science in any way. In fact, Islam complements, science complements Islam. Let me give you one example from the Quran. وَالسَّمَاءَ بَنَيْنَاهَا بِأَيْدٍ وَإِنَّا لَمُوسِئُونَ. God created the universe and He is the one who is expanding it. This is a verse in the Quran. What it says is, this is very interesting, a book that was revealed 1,400 years ago, saying that the universe is actually expanding. This is very interesting, because scientists discovered this reality in the 20th century. When Edwin Hubble observed that galaxies were moving away from each other with velocities proportional to their distances, they realized that the universe was expanding. And it's interesting that the Quran, 14 centuries ago, mentions this reality, this fact here. And there are many verses in the Quran, really, that affirm scientific facts. So there is no contradiction between science and Islam. This is the main thing that I would like to point out here. The questions here with the theory of evolution, is the theory really equals science? This is what we need to address, really. The answer to this question is not entirely, because it was confirmed through experimentation that it would not, if it was confirmed through experimentation, it would not be a theory anymore. It would be a scientific law, just like the Newton's law of F equals ma or P equals mv, because these are established laws of physics.
That's right.
However, in regards to the theory of evolution, we still call it a theory, because it's not an established law, of science. Yes. So the Darwinian model is a theory. He published his work in 1859 and argued that species originated from a common ancestor by means of natural selection and adaptation. Yeah. This is the Darwin's view.
Okay, so how should Muslims approach the theory of evolution then? I mean, do we reject it altogether, or do we accept it and say it is God who controls the entire process?
Well, this depends, because this is a very tricky question, because the theory of evolution builds its argument on scientific facts, some scientific facts, such as natural selection, adaptation, and mutation. And all of these are biological facts. They're realities. So they cannot be denied, really, from a scientific perspective. You cannot deny these things. However, if you take a biological fact and put a different spin on it, to argue that these mechanisms can evolve into a species, or evolve a species into a different species, then everything changes, because you are attempting to build a theory on fact. This is very interesting. You are adding onions and garlics into the ingredients of a chocolate cake. You are proposing that perhaps we can make lasagna by changing some of the ingredients here. And then the theory is mixed up. It's facts and fiction are mixed up there.
Right.
What I mean by this is, for example, mutations occur in living organisms at all the time. Their genetic structures are also designed in such a way that they have the ability to adapt to the changing conditions in the environment. So, but these things, this is a very important bit of the evolution theory, these things restricted by their genetic coding. So adaptation, mutation is restricted by the genetic coding of a certain species. So adaptations, for example, in order to adapt, a species do not evolve into another species, because, as I said, adaptations and mutations are restricted to the species itself. So, for example, I can give you one example about
Please do,
this.
yeah.
Yeah. If we climb to a high altitude, human beings, if we climb to a high altitude.
Like rock climbers.
Yeah, like rock climbers, like mountaineers.
Mountaineers, yeah.
Yeah, mountaineers. So if we climb to a high altitude, they have a zone called the death zone, which is 8,000 meters. Once you exceed that zone, your body does not adapt anymore to the conditions. Because normally, if you live in high altitudes for a long time, it is said that scientists have discovered that the human body produces more red blood cells so that our brains get more oxygen so that we survive. However, once you pass the limit of 8,000, fatality occurs. In fact, in Everest, Mount Everest, a lot of people died at this thing, death zone, the mountain climbers. A lot of them died at this death zone. So what I'm trying to say here is, if you take a fish out of water, it is not going to adapt to the conditions. It is not going to grow lungs. No matter how long you sort of speculate, it would stay there. And this does not change with quantity. Whether it's one fish out of water or a billion fish out of water, they're all going to die because their system of adaptation is limited by their genetic coding. So therefore, this is very interesting. What this means is that if the species is adapting so that it can survive better in its environment, this is another argument, then there is direction and purpose and in the process of adaptation and mutation. Therefore, these processes cannot be random, cannot be happening by chance. If a species is adapting to the environment, then that means there's a purpose there. It wants to survive in those conditions.
Right.
In order for that to happen, that means there's direction there, there's purpose there. And you cannot have randomness, chance with purpose. There are two different arguments there. Now, in regards to mutations, you know how evolutionists claim that over millions of years, animals have mutated through a change or slight variations within their gene pool.
That's right, that's what the claim is.
Into different species. This is called the interspecies evolution. Now, from an Islamic perspective, we do not agree with this, but we are not disagreeing in the name of religion. We are really disagreeing in the name of science. There is no evidence to it. Like in a humorous way, if I show this to our viewers, for example, we would never see anything like this.
Wow.
We would never see anything like this. But this is only a humor,
Yeah,
because
that's right.
the evolution theory does not argue, of course, they change like that within a very short period of time. Their argument is it takes millions of years. But the thing is, we do not have any evidence of, species evolving into different species. We do know that they adapt, they mutate, and there is selection in nature. We do not know this as well.
Yeah.
But I do not personally call it natural selection. I call it selection in nature, because I believe there is direction and purpose there. And for these things to occur, that means there is control. There is a mechanism that controls everything. So it cannot be really random. So in regards to interspecies evolution, actually there is no factual evidence. Fossil records are not scientific evidence for interspecies evolution, as similarities in bone structure is not an evidence for a common ancestor to all species. It means that the argument is based on history, not experimentation. Nobody has ever experimented in the lab and shown us that species can evolve into another species. This is very important. So to prove the theory of mutation, adaptation, natural selection, that changes a species into another species, one would have to build a time machine, okay,
Yeah.
and travel back in time, actually document the process occurring at the time. Otherwise, we cannot prove it. Therefore, arguing that conditions in the Earth atmosphere were suitable for the production of amino acids, nucleic acids, for example, and once these organic compounds were formed by chance, they bonded through peptide bonds, they formed monomers, for example, and then polymers, for example, and then proteins. This is the argument. First, there was the RNA world, according to the new theory, the way it's explained, and then there was the DNA world. And then 3.7 billion years ago, the first single-celled living organisms appeared on Earth. They are called cyanobacteria, because we can see them appearing, the fossilized versions of them, within rock formations. And they say that it occurred 3.7 billion years ago, the first living cell, single cell. Now, these single-celled organisms, interestingly, they survived for 2 billion years. That's a long time.
That's
you know,
right.
it's not 100,000 years. It's 2 billion years, until one day, in a humorous way, they were sick of being a single-celled organisms. So they decided to experiment with nature to produce multi-celled organisms. Gradually, 575 million years ago, we see the appearance of thousands of multi-celled organisms, animals and so on. The argument of these, all of these new species appeared on Earth through gradual evolution, while slight variations in their gene pools, and guess what? It was all random, it was all chance, and it was all coincidental. This is what the argument is.
So as Muslims, we cannot accept such things as different species evolving through random chance. Is this your argument?
Yes, I definitely argue this, but I cannot speak on behalf of all Muslims. But as a Muslim theologian, I would say that every species has an Adam. Every species has an Adam. Moreover, let us talk about the concept of chance, because the evolution theory is based on chance, randomness. And let us talk about the concept of randomness. There's an analogy that's put forward by a Christian theologian. When I heard of it first time, I was really, I liked it, the way he put it, the way he proposed it. Yeah. And unfortunately, I can't remember his name now, so I cannot cite him. But he says, imagine the sand ripples on the beach. If you were strolling by and you came across these sand ripples and you wanted to sort of build a theory on how they might have occurred, and if you said that the high tide and the low tide, the sea coming in and out, the water could have
ripples.
Yeah, they can cause them randomly as ripples, and you would accept this theory, wouldn't you? You would say, yes, this is logical because it can occur through randomly. It can occur. However, on the same beach, if you come across a love heart on the ground, and inside the love heart it is written, for example, John loves Debbie. Now, can you use the same argument that you use for the sand ripples?
No.
You can't. Why cannot you use this? Because you know that there is meaning there, there is design there, there is purpose there. Someone has drawn that heart there with a purpose, giving a message. So you cannot ignore the fact that there is purpose there and there is a designer there. There is an intent there. So the argument changes there. Now, if you take this example and apply it to whole of the universe, think about the entire universe. Do you see that there is a perfect design there? There's perfect order there. There's purpose there. There is direction there. There is another example, analogy, provided by Fred Hoyle. He's a philosopher as well. And I find this very interesting too. He says that if a tornado sweeps through an aeroplane junkyard and then assembles a fully functioning Boeing 747, if we claim this, would anyone accept this? By itself, by chance, by randomness, a tornado sweeps through a junkyard, aeroplane junkyard, and then we see the assembling of a perfect 747. Now, look at human beings and an aeroplane, which is more complex.
Human beings are much more complex.
Now, how do you expect us to believe that we were assembled, or we came to this position, this complexity, by just random chances? It would be very hard to believe, on my behalf anyway. It is for this reason, when you think about the origin of life in particular, if we wanted to refute some aspects of the evolution theory, I would really refute firstly the origin of life. I think that's the most important part of it. Because the biogenesis theory or rule states that life can only originate from other life. It is for this reason that evolutionists are looking for a different alternative now. Because you cannot prove how life originated on Earth. How can life come into being from a non-living matter? The rule, is against that. It's not possible. So they're looking for a different alternative, and what can we say? Different theory.
Yeah.
And the new theory is this: the anthropic principle. They're saying that life may have arrived from space on a meteorite. On a meteorite or an asteroid, for example, or a comet. Does this solve the problem of religion? Origin, really? Does it fall?
Not really. Where did life come originally?
Yeah.
That's the original thing.
If a living being, a bacteria, arrived on a meteorite to Earth, where did it originate from? Because we know the rule is life only comes from life.
That's right.
Where did that life come from initially? So it doesn't really solve the problem. Well, of course, unless you agree that life was created, it changes everything. So, in order to prove that life can evolve from non-living matter, scientists, this is what they need to do. They don't need to wait for millions of years, for example, now, for amino acids, nucleic acids, proteins to form. Anyone can obtain protein now. You can go to any chemist or pharmacist and purchase some proteins. Take it to the lab and prove to us that you can create life out of non-living matter, and say that it can happen. And in a humorous way, I say this, if one day, although it's not possible, if one day some scientist, achieves this and forms a living being out of non-living matter, the first thing he will do, assuming that he's a he and his name is George, for example, he will name it. He will, for example, call it Georgius Bacterus, for example.
Yeah.
And then what he will do is he will announce to the world that I have created life. He will not say life came into existence by randomness or chance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can we say that as Muslims we cannot accept life evolving through random chance? It needs an originator. And one more thing, we do accept that there is selection, adaptation and mutation in nature, but the question is, what mechanism is used here?
Yeah, exactly. You hit the nail right on the head here, Vaisar. Everything that exists, really, everything that exists needs an explanation of its existence. There is an analogy that I use, it was put forward by William Craig. He says that if you were strolling in the jungle and you came across this translucent ball, now you can sort of produce a lot of theories there, how it came to be there. But if you said, we'll analyze it, we'll benefit from it, but forget about, thinking about where it came from, how it originated, this would be illogical, philosophically illogical anyway.
Yeah.
Any human being with intellect would say, where did this ball come from? Because that ball needs an explanation of its existence. Now, if we increase the size of the ball to the size of the Earth, does the argument change?
Not at all.
No. The Earth needs an explanation of its existence.
That's right.
If we increase the size to the size of the universe, immense size, the argument does not change.
Does not change.
It still needs to be explained how it came to be there. Yes. So I think we are heading towards the end now. As I said before, everything that exists needs an explanation of its existence, and you cannot explain the existence with concepts such as chance and randomness. You cannot explain it also by claiming that there may be billion universes out there, which is the multiverse theory, because our universe is too perfect, it's improbable, because it functions with perfect laws, physical laws, like for example the four fundamental forces, nuclear force, strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, electromagnetic force, the gravity, the universe functions on certain forces, and these forces, these laws need to be implemented. You cannot say they are occurring by just randomness and chance. So we see a just so design in the universe. Now, if I were to argue that maybe perhaps there are billions of universes, because ours is too improbable, it's too perfect, out of those billions of universes, one of them turned out to be like this. Now, does that change the argument of where all the universes originated from?
No.
So there is always a need for an originator.
That's right.
And we cannot explain things through chance and randomness, I think, yeah.
Omar, thank you very much on this very interesting and controversial topic.
Yes,
that
it
you
is
just
it's
explained.
quite controversial.
And I'd like to thank our viewers as well. And if they've got any questions, they could email or write to us on the email that will be provided. Thank you for joining Islam Explained, and see you next time. Thank you.